Russia tells Britain and other Western countries it's expelling more diplomats after the Salisbury poisoning row. Summoned to the Foreign Ministry in Moscow, a string of staff from across Europe are ordered to leave Russia. At least 13 Palestinians are killed after a mass protest on the border between Gaza and Israel. Making the numbers add up. Should teachers be asking parents to put their hands in their pockets to help school budgets? And eyes on the prize, Anthony Joshua and Joseph Parker weigh in for tomorrow's big fight. Good evening. In a day of tit-for-tat diplomatic expulsions after the Salisbury nerve agent attack, Russia has told Britain it has to cut the number of staff it has there to the number that Russia has in the UK. In a series of coordinated moves, Moscow expelled embassy staff from several countries, including Germany, Spain, Croatia and Norway. The Foreign Office described Moscow's demand as regrettable, but said it didn't distract from what it called Russia's flagrant breach of international law. From Moscow, Sarah Rainsford reports.
It was quite a sight. A stream of ambassadors summoned to Russia's foreign ministry. They came from more than 20 countries to hear their punishment. Each one had backed Britain and accused Russia of the nerve agent attack in Salisbury. The German ambassador emerged to say Moscow still has questions to answer over the poisoning. But his country is now losing 4 diplomats here. In total, well over 100 will join a mass exodus from Moscow. There have been extraordinary scenes here all day as one by one ambassadors have been called in to the foreign ministry. The timing of this, the choreography, seem meant to send a message that Russia will hit back at any moves made against it by Western governments. And today, Moscow decided to escalate. The British ambassador was summoned again, ordered to cut his staff even further.
It's important to bear in mind why this crisis has arisen in the first place. It is the use of a chemical weapon on the streets of the United Kingdom that has threatened the lives of a number of people in my country.
23 British diplomats have already left this embassy. Now the UK has to match its total diplomatic presence here to the Russian headcount in the UK. This move is a clear sign that Vladimir Putin is determined not to give in under pressure.
Expulsions look so easy. You don't have to pay a high price on either side for expulsions, but it is not the case. I'm afraid that if the overall fabric of the relationship gets thinner and thinner, we have a real problem.
That problem, though, is already here. Western countries seem determined to show Russia it's crossed a line, but the Kremlin still calls the accusations against it outrageous, and it's warning that further sanctions could follow. Well, today Russia insisted that it didn't start this crisis and said it's being forced to retaliate against what it calls unfriendly moves by the UK and its allies. The Kremlin spokesman said that Mr. Putin wants good relations and that he is open to dialogue. But judging by today's expulsions, and particularly those extra moves against the UK, it seems that Mr. Putin is pushing for that dialogue on his terms.
Sarah, thank you. Our correspondent Sarah Rainsford there. The Health Ministry in Gaza says that at least 13 people have been killed by Israeli security forces along the Israel-Gaza border. Thousands of Palestinians joined a mass protest called by Hamas, which controls Gaza, and other Palestinian groups. Israel's military doubled its usual deployment of troops in the area just ahead of the Jewish Passover holiday and said it would act to stop any breach of its border fence. Well, our correspondent Yolande Knell is in Jerusalem for us now. Yolande.
This has been one of the largest Palestinian demonstrations on the Israel-Gaza border in recent years. An Israeli military official told me that about 30,000 people took part. Now, there was some family entertainment in encampments that had been set up, but as the day went on, many Palestinians approached Gaza's perimeter fence and waiting Israeli forces. A chaotic rush to the hospital, with hundreds of Palestinians injured in Gaza. A call for peaceful marches turned to violence as protesters headed towards the Israeli border. Israel's military says it used tear gas and opened fire to stop anyone illegally crossing into its territory or attacking soldiers. And this was just the start. Palestinians are planning a series of protests until mid-May. That will be 70 years on from the creation of the State of Israel. Palestinians see it as their catastrophe when hundreds of thousands of people fled their homes. And many here have never given up their claim to the land.
We are here to stress our right to return. Sooner or later, we must go back.
We want to tell the world that returning to our land is non-negotiable.
But Israel says Gaza's leaders are cynically exploiting ordinary people to stir up unrest.
Hamas and other Palestinian groups are calling their protest the March of Return. However, as events unfold, it's the March of Chaos. These are aggressive riots.
Gazan families are now being urged to stay at protest camps along the Israeli border. And that will ensure that tensions here remain high in the weeks ahead. Yolande Nell, BBC News, Jerusalem.
Parents are increasingly being asked to contribute towards classroom basics such as textbooks, says the leader of the largest teachers' union. Ahead of their annual conference in Brighton, Kevin Courtney of the National Education Union said that despite more than £1 billion of extra funding being allocated to schools in England, rising costs meant they still faced tough choices. Our education editor Branwyn Jeffries reports.
11, 12, 13.
They're not the only ones counting carefully. The budget is tight at this primary school. It's in West Sussex, an area of low funding.
And we need to make sure it's the same amount in each quarter.
Parents paid for the rug in this classroom, part of a wish list set up online by one mum.
That was a big shock to myself when I came to the school and asked them to provide items that they really needed. And they were asking me to put on hand towels, tissues, toilet roll, glue sticks, pencils, exercise books. They have to raise the funds somehow to provide all the children in the next school year with exercise books, and the money's not necessarily there.
The online portal has raised £5,000 in a month, not just from parents but from the local community too.
Schools can only ask parents for voluntary contributions. It's meant to be for little extras. But with budgets increasingly under pressure from rising costs, parents are finding themselves forking out for the basics.
What's another question, Max?
Some extra money is going to schools, more than £1 billion across England, a bigger share for West Sussex. But the big cost is staff. Teachers are asking for a 5% pay increase. The head here says it all feels too uncertain.
My concern is that we're going to end up with a real yo-yo system where there'll be the teacher cuts, there'll be the redundancies, there'll be the school closures, and then all of a sudden then more money will be put back into education, but just too late. And so then what do we do?
So we've shared them into quarters. What do we now need to do?
Not enough teachers are training, too many are leaving.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Teachers' unions say a pay rise would help. They want the government, not schools, to find more money.
And we can talk to Branwyn in Brighton now. And Branwyn, pay isn't the only issue that's being discussed today.
Far from it, Rita. It's already pretty lively here with teachers gathering. And something of a row has broken out between the large teaching union and the Chief Inspector of Schools. Earlier this year, Amanda Smealman backed a primary school head teacher in East London who wanted to ban the hijab. Well, today, Kevin Courtney, the General Secretary of the National Education Union, told me that was politicising a debate, that she had overstepped the mark. Tomorrow, teachers will be debating a motion in which they call for her to reconsider, bearing in mind the abuse that some Muslim women and girls get for what they wear and how they dress. They say that schools should be allowed to make their own uniform policies once they've consulted with the community. But Ofsted says the union's remarks are deeply disappointing and that it's right to back head teachers if they're making difficult, tough decisions in the interests of pupils, particularly when their welfare is concerned or when community cohesion is at stake. Rita.
Okay. Branwen, many thanks. The Ministry of Defence has confirmed that a member of the UK Armed Forces has been killed in Syria. It said the individual was embedded with US forces in an operation against the Islamic State group. There's been a big fall in the use of bail following the introduction of a 28-day time limit last year. It's thought the number of people released from custody with bail conditions attached has fallen by about 2/3. A BBC Freedom of Information request responded to by 12 forces found over 3,000 suspects released without bail conditions between April and June last year. The figure included 31 murder suspects and 768 people suspected of rape. In a message to mark the Jewish festival of Passover, Jeremy Corbyn has said Labour must do better at dealing with anti-Semitism. And he said he's committed to ensuring the party is a welcoming and secure place for Jewish people. It comes as 44 Labour MPs and peers called on Mr Corbyn to suspend a senior official from the party's ruling body over her handling of a complaint about anti-Semitism. Malala Yousafzai, the youngest ever winner of the Nobel Peace Prize, has told the BBC she hopes one day to move back to Pakistan. She's currently on her first trip back there after she was nearly killed by the Pakistani Taliban in 2012 for campaigning for girls' education. She was brought to Britain for treatment and has been living here ever since. She spoke to our Pakistan correspondent Sikandar Kamani in the capital, Islamabad.
This was the last time Malala was in Pakistan, fighting for her life after being shot by militants. After nearly 6 years, she's now back and says she still can't believe it.
It is emotional, each and everything I see. It is valuable to me, even just this warm air. I value it and I'm enjoying it, and I am just so happy to be home and to put my feet on this land again.
Malala, though, has her critics in Pakistan. Many on social media accuse her of being a Western agent. How does it feel when you read those kind of comments?
Firstly, I just don't understand why do they oppose me and what is the reason behind it. I want a better future for this country. That's why I started speaking out for girls' education. That's why I did not fear anything, and I said even if the terrorists attack me, it does not matter, I will continue speaking out. And it did happen, and I continued my campaign for girls' education. So my focus is only working for the good. It's 200 million people, and I know that 99%, more than 99% stand with me, support me. They believe in education, they believe in their daughters.
Yesterday, Malala spoke at an event attended by the Pakistani Prime Minister. But she says she doesn't have political ambitions herself.
So when I was 11 or 12, and when there was extremism happening in Swat Valley, at that time I thought that by becoming Prime Minister I can solve every problem and I will eradicate all these extremists and everything will be fixed. But I think now I have met many leaders and politicians and Prime Ministers, and it seems that it's not that simple, and and I think my focus right now is continuing my work through Malala Fund, and making sure we reach out to as many girls as we can, and there are 130 million girls who cannot go to school right now, to ensure that they can get quality education. I have no intention right now of politics.
And that was Malala Yousafzai speaking to Sikandar Kamani. The Prince of Wales has recorded an Easter message in support of persecuted Christians and members of other faiths around the world. He called for greater understanding between Judaism, Islam and Christianity, and criticised anyone of any faith who resorts to violence and persecution of others because of their faiths. Scientists say it's the technology that could revolutionise computing. It's called quantum computing, and for years companies have been vying to build a fully operational quantum computer which could process information much faster than today's most powerful supercomputers. Now scientists at Microsoft say they're on the verge of a major breakthrough. Our technology correspondent Rory Kethlen-Jones reports.
Copenhagen, and it's pretty cold outside. But inside a university lab, there's a place that's even colder.
Well, if you look right up here on this gauge, you'll see that the inside of that refrigerator is sitting at 0.03 of a degree above absolute zero. That's 100 times colder than deep space. This may be the coldest place in the universe.
And this is why embedded in this chip is a qubit, the building block for the computer of the future, which will only work under these extreme conditions. Microsoft is working with scientists here and around the world to build a quantum computer. They're confident they're about to make a major breakthrough. If they succeed, there's a huge prize.
Quantum really represents a giant leap forward from today's technology. We can begin to solve problems that would take us today more than the lifetime of the universe to solve in seconds, hours, or days.
So how does a quantum computer work? Drill down into a conventional computer and you'll find the bit, the basic unit of information, which is either a 0 or a 1. Think of it as a switch which is either on or off. But at the heart of a quantum computer is the qubit. And the magic here is that it can be both 1 and 0 at the same time. The switch can be both on and off. This supercharges any computer program, making impossible problems easy to solve. We could find answers to climate change, make rapid progress in artificial intelligence, and break encryption. Secure codes would be simple to crack.